6 months ago, I slipped out of Philadelphia like a shadow, leaving behind a life no one seemed to notice I had. My new home in Eugene, Oregon, is a small apartment with a creaky wooden floor and a view of snow-dusted pines, a world away from the noise of my family's world. Not once in those 6 months did my parents call, text, or email. No questions about why I left, why my apartment lease ended, or how I spent my 29th birthday 2 months ago, alone with a cupcake from a local bakery and a playlist I'd made for myself. I can still picture my last morning in Philadelphia, the air thick with spring humidity, clinging to my skin as I stood in my nearly empty apartment. The walls were bare, stripped of the sketches I'd pinned up over the years. Quinn, my best friend, was there, stacking boxes labeled books and dreams with a playful smirk. "You sure you're not leaving them a note?" she asked, taping a carton shut with a screech of adhesive. I shook my head, shoving a duffel bag closed. "They haven't asked where I've been in years. Why would I tell them I'm leaving?" Quinn didn't push. She just gave me that look, half pity, half respect, and hauled another box to the rental van parked outside. But for me, it wasn't. It was normal, predictable. I had always been the extra piece in the family picture, for as long as I could remember. Quiet, invisible, only acknowledged when useful. Nora was the sun, the center, the reason everyone looked. I was the background. The U-Haul we rented creaked as I loaded the last box. I shut the back door with both hands, pressing my palms flat against the metal until I heard the latch click. Then I stood there for a moment, staring at what had been my home for nearly a decade. Not because it held memories, but because it held silence. "You ready?" Quinn asked, twirling the keys around her finger. I nodded. More than ready. The drive to Eugene was long and quiet. I watched the scenery outside the window shift, from the gray streets of Philadelphia to lush green forests, from crowded to open. By the time we crossed into Oregon, something inside me began to ease. My new apartment wasn't anything special. 1 bedroom, a slightly outdated kitchen, a small balcony overflowing with flowers. But it was mine. Mine, truly mine, in a way nothing ever had been. I hung up my own photos, arranged my desk exactly how I liked it, cooked real dinners without anyone interrupting or brushing me off. I woke up early, logged into work, watered the little herb plants by the kitchen window. Quinn dropped by every few weeks, bringing laughter and stories from Philadelphia. Grandpa Joseph called every week without fail. No one else did. Some nights, that fact made me laugh. Not the bitter kind, just a hollow sound echoing in an empty room. I had disappeared, and no one even noticed. Until last week. When the phone rang and the name popped up, I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the screen. Mrs. Stella. As if that name belonged to another life. I picked up on the 4th ring. My mother's voice was curt, irritated. "You need to come home this weekend." I should have known what that call meant. Her tone wasn't disappointment or confusion. It was command. I was being summoned, but not for my benefit. I didn't ask for details. I said I was busy and hung up before she could launch into one of her familiar lectures. Then I sat back at my desk, staring out at the pine-covered hills behind the apartment, and that old heaviness settled over me again. Not sadness, just the realization. It had always been like this. When I was 8, I got top student honors 3 terms in a row. I placed my report card neatly on the dinner table, where I knew she'd sit to drink her tea. She glanced at it once and said, "Good job, sweetheart," without looking up from her phone. That same week, Nora got a C on a literature test, and still got to pick dinner and received pocket money, something I never had. The year I won first place in the regional science fair, I brought home a trophy half my height. My teacher pulled me aside that morning and said I should be proud. And I was. I wanted them to be proud too. At dinner, I placed the trophy on the kitchen counter. My father said, "Don't make a big deal out of it, Avery. Your sister's under pressure with college exams." That was the year I stopped bringing achievements home. When I was 16, I pitched an idea for a book review column to the family's publishing company, hoping for a summer internship. My father dismissed it, saying, "Nora's already helping with marketing. We don't need extra hands." A week later, Nora, who barely read books, was given a paid role in the company. I remember standing in the hallway outside his office, the rejection cutting deeper than I expected. It wasn't just about the job. It was the realization that I'd never have a place in their world, not the way Nora did. By the time I was 18, I knew I'd have to pay for college myself. Even though my family was well off, I went to a public university on scholarship, worked 2 part-time jobs, and didn't go home for holidays. It was easier that way. Cleaner. I graduated early, moved into a shared apartment, took whatever freelance work I could find, even though my family had their own company. My resume grew faster than my social life, but I didn't mind. Work was something I could control. Work didn't forget me at the dinner table. Eventually, I got hired by a news outlet in Portland, freelancing as a journalist. Remote work, flexible hours, full benefits. I've been there almost 3 years now. The editor-in-chief says I have a knack for spotting stories others overlook. My savings account now has commas in it. My fridge stays stocked with fresh food. My inbox held a pre-approval letter from a real estate firm. I'm 29 and starting to think about buying a home. Not a big one, just mine. So, when my father's voice tried to pull me back into duties disguised as family obligations last Friday, I didn't flinch. I'm no longer a 3-year-old still hoping for a scrap of affection from my parents. I let the silence stretch long enough for my father to understand I wasn't coming home. "This Sunday, you have to be home," he said right away. No hello, no asking how I was. Just an order, like I was still the little girl waiting for permission to breathe. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Why? A pause. I could almost hear him scowling through the phone. "Your sister's promotion party. She's just been appointed CEO of our publishing company. The partners want to see a united family. They care a lot about image." Of course. Not reunion. Not connection. Just a staged performance to save face. A seat in the shape of a daughter, to complete the picture of a perfect family. "I'm not coming," I said. Another pause, sharper this time. "What do you mean, not coming?" "I mean exactly what I said. I have other plans. Avery, this is important for your sister's future. These are influential people. If you don't show up, the whole family will be embarrassed." There it was. The whole family, not me. Not how I was doing or where I'd been. Just appearances. "I moved to Oregon 6 months ago," I said, my voice calm. "I'm not flying across the country for a party I wasn't even invited to until now." Silence. The kind that isn't really quiet, but tight and heavy, like the air before a storm. "You moved without telling the family? What's your address?" I almost laughed bitterly. "Do you remember my old address?" He didn't answer right away, and that said everything. "That's not the point." "It is the point," I said. "You're not asking because you care. You're asking because not knowing now is inconvenient. Avery, families don't operate like this." "No," I replied, "but ours always has. And only like this. With me." I hung up. My hand didn't shake. For a moment, I just sat there, letting the quiet wash over me. Then the phone lit up. A missed call. Then another. Then texts. From my father. From my mother. Even from Nora. I didn't answer any of them. I turned off my phone, made a cup of tea, and stood on the balcony, watching the light fade into the sky. By morning, The messages had shifted from reminders to guilt trips, then to threats. By the weekend, I had 5 voicemails, 9 texts, and 2 emails with subject lines like, "Can we talk?" or "Family sticks together." My mother called Saturday morning. Her voice was tight, trying to sound warm but sticking to a script. "Sweetheart, this isn't like you. You've always been the reasonable one. Your sister's counting on you. The partners are strict about this. We need to show unity." Unity. A word that means nothing when it's only used for outsiders. "I'm not going," I said simply. "Avery, don't be difficult." "I'm not being difficult. I'm being honest." She sighed, frustrated. "It's just one party. You don't have to stay long. Smile, say a few things, and then you can disappear again if that's what you want." "You mean, like I already have?" Silence again. Then she hung up. Nora called next. Her tone was different, less forceful, but confused. "Hey, I don't know what's going on between you and Mom and Dad, but you can't come for me?" I almost felt something. Almost. But I remembered the years she turned away when I was ignored. "No," I said. "Not this time." The next day, my father called again. His voice dropped the act. "If you don't come to this party, you'll be cut from the will." I let the silence stretch, just long enough for him to think I was weighing it. Then I said, steady and clear, "I make more money than whatever you planned to leave me. And unless I'm mistaken, you already took me off the will." I heard him inhale like I'd slapped him. "You're lying." "If you ever asked about my life," I said, "you'd know I'm not." He didn't respond. He hung up. That was the last call I took. The messages kept coming, first urgent, then desperate, then angry. I didn't respond. I silenced my phone, opened my notebook, and jotted down ideas for my next article, letting the quiet of the evening anchor me. The silence didn't burden me. For the first time, it felt like a statement. I don't need them to be myself. I went back inside, opened my laptop, and continued writing my article for a local magazine, a story about Oregon forests, where the roots grow deep and need no permission to exist. When I finished, I signed up for a painting class at the community center. Not because I needed it, just because I wanted to, because I had the right to choose what makes me happy. Before bed, I opened the real estate tab and checked on the house I'd saved last week. 3 bedrooms, pine wood walls, a patch of yard for a garden. It wasn't just a place to live. It was proof of everything I'd built, without needing their approval. The next morning, just as the sky behind the trees turned pink, Grandpa called. He didn't ask for permission, didn't check if I was free. He just called, and I always picked up. "Hi, sweetheart," he said, his voice calm, laced with warmth and understanding. "How's the air over there today?" "Cool and quiet," I said. "Just how I like it." We talked for a few minutes about the lavender I'd planted on my balcony, about the deer that sometimes wandered behind the apartment. Then he paused. "They asked me to call you," he said, not apologetically, just plainly. I had guessed that. "To convince me to play the good daughter, right?" "They didn't say it that way," he replied, "but yes. Your mother's been pacing. Your father's snappy. They're panicking because the partners are asking questions." I let out a small laugh. Of course. My worth only became visible when it was tied to someone else's expectations. "I'm not going back, Grandpa." "I know," he said. "I wouldn't either, if I were you." That's why I always answered his calls. He never sugarcoated the truth, never made excuses for them, never pretended the past didn't happen. He remembered my birthday, sent postcards from short trips, asked about my work, and actually listened to the answers. He was the only one who looked at me and saw me, not what I could offer. I just wanted you to hear this from someone honest, he said. Not because you owe them anything. Thank you, Grandpa, I said. Are you okay? I'm okay, I said, and I really meant it. Truly? We talked until the tea in my hand went cold. He asked about the house I'd been eyeing, whether I'd paint the walls or keep them as is. We talked about furniture, fig trees, things that had nothing to do with obligation. By the time we said goodbye, the sun had warmed the window, and I was back at my laptop, running mortgage numbers. The day of the party came and went without me. I spent the morning volunteering with friends at a nearby park, planting trees between tall pines and early spring wildflowers. The quiet there wasn't empty. It was earned. I didn't check my phone. I didn't care what was happening on the other side of the country. I breathed deeply, let the wind circle around me, and kept moving. That night, when I got home, I saw a missed call from Grandpa. I called him back before I even took off my shoes. "Hi, sweetheart," he said. "Did you enjoy your day?" He let out a slow sigh. "The party's over." I waited. "It was tense," he said. "The kind of tension that looks polite on the outside, but stiffens your neck just from being in the same room. Sound familiar?" He chuckled softly. "Your parents tried to keep it all smooth, but your mother was fidgety. Your father barely spoke. One of the big partners kept looking around, like he was expecting someone." "Me?" "Yes. And when it became clear you weren't coming, he asked why." I closed my eyes, letting the moment settle. "What did they say?" "They tried everything. First that you were busy, then that work had called you away, then something about you attending a conference somewhere. All lies. That partner knew. You could see it on his face. He asked more. Why hadn't he seen you at past events? Why he'd only heard of you a few weeks ago?" He paused. "Word is, he had a private conversation with your mother after the party. No one knows exactly what was said, but she came out looking pale and silent. I think she got exposed." I almost let a smile slip. "And Nora?" "Your sister looked distracted all night, kept glancing at the door, couldn't hold a smile. A close company partner asked directly why you'd been left out. Nora tried to downplay it, but I think she's realizing this won't just blow over. That big partner, he doesn't like being played." I sat down at the kitchen table, letting the truth sink in. Not malice, just the quiet satisfaction of watching truth catch up with the lies. "They still think this is about one party," I said. "I know," he replied. "But the partner saw it, Avery. The injustice, the omission, the bruises." I set the plates down and leaned against the counter. "Is the company shaking?" "There's tension," Grandpa said. "The kind that doesn't disappear after one event." I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't want things to fall apart for Nora. I just felt still, like watching ripples spread across a lake after dropping a stone. "They've started asking around," Grandpa continued. "Your parents want to know who has your new number, your new address. They asked me again. You didn't tell them, right?" "Of course not," he said. "I told them if you wanted to talk, you'd reach out yourself." I exhaled slowly. "Thank you." "They're worried," he went on. "Not just about you, but about what Nora's partner might do or say, and how that could affect her future." "They're managing damage control," I said, "not caring about me." "Exactly," he said softly. "But they're starting to realize this doesn't just disappear. The way they treated you, it leaves a mark." I looked around my small kitchen. The sunlight on the counter, the freshly folded dish towel by the sink, the window above the stove looking out to the pines. This wasn't just a place I lived. It was mine. "They're the ones who disappeared," I said. They just didn't notice until someone else did. He didn't answer right away, but I could hear the pride in his silence, the kind that doesn't need to be spoken. We talked for another 10 minutes, about nothing in particular. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and scrolled through listings. The house I'd been eyeing was still there. I saved it again, just in case. The family kept trying to reach out. The messages came, at first gentle, then accusatory, then pleading. An email from my mother, subject line, "We need to talk." A voicemail from Nora, her voice hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she was apologizing or asking for something. I didn't respond. I changed my phone number that week. Only a few people had the new one. Grandpa, my editor-in-chief, and Quinn. That was enough. No more surprise calls. No more messages disguising obligation as care. No more family dinners where my name was just an afterthought. My little apartment now held only the sound of wind sweeping through the balcony and the quiet tap of keys as I wrote. I had signed the papers to buy a house. Not big, just 3 rooms, oak-paneled walls, a small yard for plants, my name on every line. No cosigner, no conditions. Just mine, fully. Quinn texted about her flight next month. She wanted to come see the house and help me plant the first flower beds. On move-in day, sunlight spilled through the windows, casting light on the lavender pot I brought from the old place. I sat at the table, opened my laptop, and started to write. Not an article, not notes. This time, a book. The first lines were shaky, but they were mine, like the house, like the life I was building. Every night, I wrote a little more. A story about a girl who found herself in the quiet and the trees. The first gathering at the new house happened one weekend afternoon. Quinn brought a tray of slightly burned cookies, laughing loudly about her latest cooking fail. Friends from the tree planting group showed up with homemade wine and a colorful salad. Laughter filled the yard, mixing with the smell of grilled meat and birdsong from the pine branches. A little girl from the group, the daughter of one of the volunteers, ran up and pressed a bracelet made of dried grass into my hand. "You're my grown-up friend," she said, serious like she was declaring something important. I smiled and slipped the bracelet onto my wrist. A neighbor, the old man who lived down the street, sat beside me with a cup of tea in hand. "Your family in Philadelphia?" he asked, his voice curious. I looked around. Quinn was debating grilling techniques with a volunteer, the little girl still chattering about a squirrel in the garden. "No," I said. "My real family is here." I pointed toward the yard, where the evening sun glowed golden, where these people had chosen to stand beside me. Not out of duty, but out of friendship. The old man nodded, like he understood. That night, after everyone left, I cleared the table, stacked the chairs, and stood alone in the living room. Moonlight streamed through the window, falling onto the open page on the table. I sat down and kept writing. Each word was a step, each sentence a breath. I had found freedom, not in running away, but in choosing to stay. With myself, with the ones who truly cared, with the life I built on my own terms. The house was quiet, but not lonely, just honest. Outside, the wind rustled gently through the flowers on the windowsill. No more surprise calls, no more requests dressed up as love. Just me, this house, and the story slowly taking shape.